I can still remember the exact moment I met him, like it was yesterday. It wasn't anything grand or dramatic, just a chance encounter on an ordinary day, but somehow, in that instant, everything felt different. His smile, the way he spoke, the warmth in his eyes, it was like he saw right through me. It wasn't just attraction, it felt like a connection, a spark that made me believe we were destined to meet. I told myself this was it, the love I had been waiting for. He wasn't just another guy, he was the one. He made me laugh like no one else could, and the way he held my hand made me feel safe, like nothing in the world could hurt me as long as I was with him. From the very beginning, he had a way with words. He'd say things like, "You're my world," or "I've never felt this way about anyone before." I remember how his voice would soften when he looked into my eyes, like he was holding the weight of every promise he made to me. When he told me he loved me for the first time, I felt like my heart might burst. He promised me a lifetime of happiness, a future filled with laughter, love, and togetherness, and I believed him. I believed every word he said. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was to the signs that something wasn't right. Little things like the way he'd quickly change the subject when I asked certain questions, or the hesitation in his voice when he spoke about the future, but at the time I ignored it all. I was so wrapped up in the love we were building that I couldn't imagine anything shattering it. It's strange, isn't it? How easy it is to trust someone who makes you feel special. You don't question them, don't doubt their intentions, because why would you? When someone says, "I'll love you forever," you want to believe them. You want it to be true, and for a while it felt like it was true. He was my everything, and I thought I was his. But as I stand here now, reflecting on what was and what could have been, I can't help but wonder, was it ever real? Or was I just caught up in a beautiful lie? The early days were everything I had ever dreamed of. It felt like the universe had aligned perfectly, bringing him into my life just when I needed him most. Every moment with him was effortless, filled with joy and an electricity I'd never felt before. I remember how he used to surprise me. Flowers delivered to my office with little notes that said, "Just because I was thinking of you," or late night phone calls where we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Those moments felt magical, like the kind of romance you only read about in books or see in movies. He knew how to make me feel special. Every touch, every word, every look, it all felt intentional, like he was building something unshakable between us. When he held my hand, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. He'd look into my eyes and say things like, "You're my everything," or "I can't imagine my life without you." And I believed him wholeheartedly. I'd find little surprises all around, a note in my purse that said, "You're my sunshine," or an unexpected date night under the stars where he'd hold me close and talk about our future. We'd dream out loud together, imagining a life where we'd conquer the world side by side. There was this one moment that always stood out to me. We were walking along the beach, the sun setting behind us, and he stopped suddenly, pulling me close. He whispered, "I've never loved anyone the way I love you." In that moment, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. I thought, this is it. This is my forever. We moved in together not long after, and it felt like everything was falling perfectly into place. Waking up next to him each morning, sharing meals, making plans for the future. It was the kind of love story I thought would never fade. But sometimes in those quiet moments there was a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. A hesitation in his smile, a distraction in his eyes. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. After all, love like ours was supposed to last forever, right? I held onto those good memories, clung to the laughter, the stolen kisses, the way he used to make me feel like I was the only one that mattered. Because in the beginning, I truly believed I was his dream come true, just as he was mine. But now, as I look back, I wonder, was it all real, or was it just a beautiful illusion I let myself believe? At first, I didn't want to believe it. How could I? Our love had felt so pure, so unbreakable, but it started with the smallest things, things that seemed too minor to be more than a coincidence, a call he wouldn't take in front of me, a notification on his phone that he quickly dismissed, or the way he'd suddenly grow quiet when I asked about his day. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was letting my insecurities get the best of me. Love is built on trust, right? So I chose to trust him even when that uneasy feeling in my chest grew stronger, but the signs became harder to ignore. There were nights when he came home late, his excuses becoming less convincing. Work ran late, traffic was bad. I stopped by a friend's place. He had answers, but they never quite felt right. I remember this one evening when he got a message that lit up his face in a way I hadn't seen in months. When I asked who it was, he mumbled something about it being a colleague and changed the subject. My heart sank, but I brushed it off. Why? Because I didn't want to face the possibility that the man I loved, the man who had promised me forever, was hiding something. And then there was the perfume, a faint scent on his shirt that wasn't mine. I told myself it was nothing, maybe someone he brushed past at work or a store clerk helping him, but deep down, a part of me knew. My gut was screaming at me, but my heart was desperate to hold on to what we had. After all, why would he betray me? Why would the man who looked me in the eyes and promised me the world have room for someone else? The whispers of suspicion were there, louder each day, but I wasn't ready to listen. Detailed voiceover for fourth heading. The revelation shattered trust. And then the day came. The day I could no longer hide from the truth. It started like any other day. He left his phone on the counter while he was in the shower, something he almost never did. I told myself I wouldn't snoop, that it wasn't right, but something inside me urged me to look. I opened it with trembling hands, my heart pounding in my chest. What I found wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was confirmation, messages, photos, a name I didn't recognize but now couldn't forget. I can't wait to see you tonight. Last night was amazing. I'll call you when I can. She doesn't suspect a thing. Every word felt like a knife in my chest. The man who said he loved me, the man who promised me forever, was sharing his heart and his body with someone else. I felt numb, like my entire world had just collapsed. When he came out of the shower, I was still holding his phone, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face. He froze, his eyes darting between me and the screen. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. But we both knew it was. I wanted to scream, to yell, to ask him how he could do this to me, but all I could say was, why? His excuses poured out, weak, hollow explanations that only added to my pain. It didn't mean anything. I was lonely. You've been so busy. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about him, about us, shattered into pieces. The love I thought we had, the trust I'd given so freely, was gone. The man standing in front of me wasn't the man I thought I loved. He was a stranger who had broken me in ways I didn't even know were possible. I'll never forget that moment. The silence that followed, the weight of the betrayal sinking into my chest, making it hard to breathe. I walked away from him that day, but a part of me stayed there, broken and lost, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. In the days after the betrayal, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of emotions. Pain, anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of loss. How could someone I loved so deeply, someone who looked me in the eyes and swore to always choose me, destroy everything we'd built so carelessly? I replayed our conversations in my mind over and over. I tried to make sense of his excuses, tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, there was something left to salvage, but every time I looked at him, all I could see was the betrayal. All I could feel was the gaping hole in my chest where my trust used to be. I wanted to forgive him. God, how I wanted to, because forgiving him meant I wouldn't have to let go, wouldn't have to start over. But how do you forgive someone who doesn't truly regret what they've done, who doesn't even understand the depth of the pain they've caused? Then, one night, as I sat alone in our living room, staring at the walls that once felt like home, I realized something. I had to stop trying to fix what was broken. I had to stop pouring all of myself into someone who had shown me that he didn't value my heart. It wasn't an easy decision. Every fiber of my being wanted to cling to the past, to the love we once shared, to the promises I believed in, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not for him, not for the hope that things might someday go back to the way they were. So I packed my bags. With each item I put into my suitcase, it felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself, pieces I had lost in the whirlwind of loving someone who didn't deserve me. And as I walked out that door, I made a vow to myself I would never settle for less than the love I deserved again. The first few weeks after I left him were the hardest. I felt like a part of me had been ripped away, like I was floating through life with no direction, no purpose. Everywhere I went, I saw reminders of him. His favorite coffee shop, the park where we'd spent lazy Sunday afternoons, the restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary, but slowly I began to rebuild. I surrounded myself with people who reminded me of my worth, who loved me for who I was, unconditionally. I started journaling, pouring all my pain onto paper, letting the words heal what was broken inside of me. I began rediscovering the parts of myself I'd neglected during our relationship. I went back to painting, something I'd always loved but hadn't made time for. I joined a yoga class, not just to stay active, but to find a sense of inner peace. And little by little, the pieces of my heart started to come back together. There were still moments of doubt, of sadness, times when I'd lie awake at night and wonder if I'd ever find love again. But those moments grew shorter, and the pain began to fade, replaced by something new. Strength. I learned that healing isn't linear. There were days I felt unstoppable and days when I wanted to curl up in bed and cry, but through it all, I kept moving forward, kept reminding myself that I deserved better than the love he gave me. And now, as I stand on the other side of that storm, I can finally breathe again. I can smile without feeling the weight of what I lost. I can look in the mirror and see not a victim, but a survivor, someone who chose herself even when it hurt the most. Looking back on everything I've been through, I feel a strange mix of emotions: sadness for what I lost, anger for the lies I believed, but most of all, pride. Pride that I found the strength to walk away from a love that wasn't real. He promised me forever, but forever was never his to give. And that's okay, because now I see that my forever doesn't depend on anyone else. It starts with me, with loving myself enough to walk away, to let go of what hurt me, and to open my heart to something better. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define me. It's not a reflection of my worth, but of his inability to see it. And as much as it hurt to lose him, I've gained something so much greater, the knowledge that I deserve more. I deserve a love that is honest, a love that lifts me up and never tears me down. And one day I'll find it. But until then, I'll keep building a life that makes me happy, a life that doesn't need anyone else to feel complete, because I am enough. And that's a love that no one can ever take away.